All right, let's go ahead and start. Welcome all. I'm Mel White, and on behalf of Three Dog Right and Classic Exhibits, thank you for attending the Future of Marketing, What to Create Now for Engagement Tomorrow. Our presenter today is Lisa Apolinski. I've had the pleasure of listening to Lisa speak about building your brand through storytelling several times. Each time, I've learned not only something new, but also something actionable. Her innovative approach to storytelling has four qualities critical to anyone in sales, marketing, and management. It's accessible, it's relatable, it's strategic, and it's transformational. During the presentation, you will have questions. Heck, I already have questions and we haven't even started yet. So enter them into the chat section. Lisa will address them either during the webinar or at the end. Lisa, thank you for being here today. I'll now turn the reins over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mel. Thank you so much for inviting me. You know, I always love speaking with you and being able to share my knowledge with your audience and your tribe. Again, hello, everyone. I am Lisa Apolinski. I am the founder of Three Dog Right. It is a full-service digital consulting agency. And last week, I had the opportunity and absolute pleasure of being in a conference called the Uprising with Mark Schaefer. Mark Schaefer, to me, is the gold standard of marketing, digital marketing and engagement. He has written, I think, like 9 books. He's spoken it everywhere. And I was one of 30 marketing leaders that was invited in. And we got to talk about the future of marketing. And I'm really excited to share what I learned just last week with you so that you are knowing what to create now, what to not worry about, and what to really focus on so that you're set up for the future, because that's what we're looking to do, to get as much done as possible right now so that our engagement is awesome for tomorrow. I have been dubbed America's digital content futurist. That is no small thing and comes with quite a bit of pressure, but that's okay. I work with companies in essence who want to accelerate revenue and take market share using digital means. And over the last 10 years, and I've been in business for 10 years, my agency has helped clients create over $1 billion in new revenue. I'm always looking to see how I can help you to transform your marketing, make it work for you, and make every single dollar that you spend count towards your bottom line and the best customer experience you can give your clients. So what is the future? There are 3 things that really stood out to me that I believe we need to talk about in this hour that we have together. First of all, we need to talk about creating our story. You have heard me talk about this ad nauseum. I have a book out, Persuade with the Digital Content Story. This to me is one of the pillars, one of the foundational cornerstones of your marketing strategy in order to have long-term relevancy and to have your content continue to work for you today, tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years from now. The second thing that we talked about is the importance of building our communities. We've been really kind of, you know, each to our own little fiefdom, right? Because of the pandemic, we've been very isolated. But building our community and starting to reach back out to our customers and prospects is a key component in your marketing strategy. And I know that doesn't sound like marketing, and it's not. I don't want you to think, oh, I'm going to market in my group. No, no, no. We're going to help strengthen and build our community, and we'll talk about why that is so critical today. And then last but not least, when we've shared our stories and we've built our community, we're now ready to humanize our brand. We're ready to start looking at our personal brand and how that transforms and translates our company brand for our customers and prospects. So let's get into it. Let's talk about creating our story. This photo, I was just talking to Mel. I was in Antarctica at the end of February. Fantastic trip. If you ever get to go to the 7th continent, do it. And I took so many photos. So you're going to see my photos peppered in here because, again, there are stories to be told. What I'm showing here, these are Adelie penguins. They're one of 4 types of species of penguin that live in Antarctica. The emperor penguin lives on the other pole. They live in the North Pole. Did not know that until I went to Antarctica. But what you're seeing is you're seeing a juvenile. That's the one that's the lighter gray, tapping the beak of the adult parent in the black to try to get fed. They almost look the same size, and they're about to be going out into the wild, but they're still looking for that food and that nourishment from their parents. And they're not huge, but at this point, they're already the same size. I thought that was pretty interesting. And I want you to remember this photo because I have another one. And again, it's going to be tying into humanizing our brand. So again, Adelie penguins, very cute. Penguins are awesome. So when we look at harnessing the power of stories, what are we trying to do when we create a story? Mel already kind of talked about it. We're trying to show relatability with our customers and our prospects. That's very different than shoving your features and benefits out into the ethos. By creating stories that help your prospects and your customers envision for themselves how they can get from where they are now to where they want to go is a key component. And the reason why the relatability works is there's an emotional connection within your story. When we think about how we've kind of been set up to receive stories, you were read stories probably when you were little and at bedtime. You, I'm sure, have watched television and gone to movies and read books. There's a huge power behind storytelling because we're able to see ourselves within the story, which makes the story more powerful. It makes it more relatable, and it draws us in, which creates that emotional connection. And when we start to have those emotional connections with people, they start to trust us and start to come to us to help them overcome their obstacles, whatever those obstacles may be. The difference with this, and I've been talking about this since pre-pandemic, and I've been kind of, hitting this drum for quite some time. We are needing to look at solving, not selling. It's a very different way of showing up. And believe me, when I have these conversations with my clients and I'm telling a group of salespeople in a Fortune 100 company to not sell, they really resist that. And there's a reason why selling in this day and age, and that's what we're talking about, this post-pandemic, digital hybrid, no one knows what's going to happen in the future day and age. People want to feel emotionally connected to you. They want to see and envision themselves succeeding, and they want to see how you can help them solve their problems. They're not looking for you to tell them the features and benefits of your products. They're looking to understand how they can get from point A to point B. Now, eventually you will talk about the features and benefits, but we don't want to lead with that. We want to lead with, let me tell you a story about how someone in a very similar situation to you went from where they are now to where you want to go. And just having those types of conversations can be very, very empowering for your customers and your prospects. And it can be establishing that relationship and that trust. And that's what we want to be building, especially in the trade show industry. We want to be there as they grow, as they expand into new shows, as they explore new booth options, as booth properties change. All that is important, and having that relatability will allow us to have that long-term relationship that we're all seeking, and having our customers come back to us again and again and again. And also, by focusing on storytelling, it removes random acts of content. It's not about sticking to a schedule per se and just pumping out content in the hopes that something will eventually stick. We want to be strategic with every action that we take, and that includes how we create and share our communication, our messaging. And looking at the opportunities to tell stories really makes our content very strategic within our plan, because every story that we tell is hoping to share something, drive a behavior, touch, move, and inspire, what have you. And we want to make sure that we're moving into that storytelling mode in order to remove this idea of random acts of content. Now, in my book, Persuade with a Digital Content Story, I do have a formula. I don't expect you to just kind of go out there and guess. We don't guess. No intuitive marketing. We want to use a formula that's been proven, that takes you through the steps of developing stories, making sure you get every component, making sure you don't hit common pitfalls when you're telling a story, and making sure that you're setting up every single story in a similar way so that it becomes more of a habit, and every piece of content that you start to look at to put out moves into more of a storytelling mode. Now, you might say, well, what if, I'm doing a tweet or I'm doing a video? It can still be small snippets within an overall storyline. But we want to think about, what story do we want to tell? If I think about my brand, do I want to tell a story of, knowledge is power, and we're here to provide those types of tools and expertise to help you traverse this crazy sea of digital noise and digital experience? That sounds like something you probably would want. Now, what if during that I went off script and I started talking about something completely different? That's not pulling you back into the story. That could be off-putting. So again, instead of saying, here are features and benefits, you can tie in those features and benefits into more of a storyline and a story formula. And it makes the content interesting. It makes it relatable. And it makes it memorable. You don't want someone to read something and then forget about it 10 seconds after they've seen it, because you spent a lot of time working on that piece. What if they could read it and that parable, those stories start to really resonate with them and they remember them? To me, that's a lot of power. People are hardwired for stories. Instead of fighting against that, use the fact that people are open to receiving stories to your marketing advantage, and start to look at your content in a story formula. And before you ask, this is a shot that I took on Deception Island. Great name for an island. It was actually a volcano that exploded, and the top caves, so it has these amazing walls, and a beach. If you can believe there's a beach in Antarctica, there's actually several. And the ground is actually ashy, like it feels like ash that you would feel out of a volcano. And this is an Antarctica, petrel. It's an Antarctica petrel. And it flies around and looks for different things to eat. It looks for, eggs from competing birds. It will look for if there are, I hate to say it, but small baby penguins around. It might take one of those to eat and to feed its offspring. Amazing bird, and this was it landing. So again, you'll probably remember Antarctica petrel sometimes eats baby penguins. That story will probably stick with you. So again, use the power and harness the power of storytelling within your communication and really start to practice that now. If you're wondering, well, where the heck would I start? Like, that seems really off-putting. Look at your data. Do you have content that didn't perform so well? Can you take it back, repurpose it into a story formula, and push it back out and see what happens? Do you have content that performed really, really well? Can you take it and do a story formula as a version 2.0? These are things you can start to test and try. You don't have to do everything at once, but do start to practice the art and science of storytelling. Now, if you are attending Exhibitor Live and you would like to get really in depth of the 6-step digital content story formula, how to use the 8 great Hollywood stories to leverage within your storytelling. If you want to see storytelling transformation in action, I'll actually have a couple examples of pretty large clients. I've pulled down, any kind of brand information, but we can talk through the content that they've put out and then how to switch it into more of a story formula, why the content kind of falls flat, and how to repurpose it. I am doing a 90-minute session on Tuesday, June 21st at 8 a.m. It is really intense. You are going to be feverishly taking notes, but like Mel said, you will absolutely have actionable items that you can use to be able to move your content forward and make it relatable and show your long-term relevancy within your customer and prospect base. So please be sure to register for that session. It will be great. 8 a.m. I'd like to stop and see if there are any, at least start with any questions and check in. Mel, any questions?
I don't see any, but right now, but if I can, I'm going to ask you a question.
Absolutely.
So when a salesperson will say, my client buys from me, not from the company, it isn't really what they're saying is that they've established not only an emotional connection with that client, but over time, they've shared a story and a history there. Isn't that kind of the same thing a little bit? How is that different?
It's interesting you bring that up because that's actually, that's talking about personal brand. And yes, salespeople will say, well, the client buys from me. And I hate to, to say it, but it's true. Your clients have established relationships with their salesperson, their representative, and they trust them. But your representative, your salesperson, probably doesn't talk about features and benefits. If they're a good salesperson and they've been with that client for a while, they know where the pain points are for the CEO. They know where the pain points are for the head of marketing. They know where the pain points are for the event manager that has to pull everything together. So they base their conversations on that individual level, and they're probably using some sort of storytelling when they talk about a new material that can be used, where it's easier to set up and it doesn't show dirt as quickly, so they can keep some of their graphic assets longer. Or there's new material that would make setup easier, and can minimize, the dreaded drayage costs, right? Helps to kind of lower some of the costs. But they've learned about the different people, and so they're selling to another person. What I would actually say to your question, Mel, is the salesperson like that has taken the leap from a B2B relationship to a P2P relationship. They've gone from I'm a business selling to a business to I'm a person selling to a person. I'm a person selling to several people. And that's where that storytelling helps move you. Because really, we're not selling brand to brand, we're selling individual to individual. And people think, oh, well, with digital, you have this ability to ramp up, but you still have to have that personal touch. And I really hate the term personalization in communication, because unless you're specifically talking to one individual, you're not personalizing anything. Just because I put a first name on an email doesn't make it personal. Salespeople are able to leverage a campaign and bring it down to that personal level. A good salesperson.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's a great question. And we'll be talking about that. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So let's talk. So we've talked about our storytelling. And as we're telling stories, we're starting to really build our community. This photo, these are chin strap penguins. If you look, they actually have a line underneath their chin, which is why they're called chin strapped. They have their own community, as you can see. When it's time to molt, which is when they get rid of their feathers and add new feathers in, which is a highly, highly stressful and energy consumption process. They gather in one spot every single time. They gather, they've had their fledglings, and now they're starting to do the molt process. They don't eat, they don't swim, they don't do anything. They just stand there and sleep and molt. Because they're getting rid of all these feathers and they're using so much of the fat that they've built up, if they go into the water, they would actually die because they would freeze to death. So they have to stay on this island in this community, and they stay together to kind of protect one another. And all that white you see is all their feathers coming out. So they leverage the idea of community to kind of support each other through this horrible process, horrible energy using, stressful process, to then when they're done and they lost like a third of their body fat and then they go back out to start feeding again. So it's really interesting to see, like, they just all of a sudden show up together and they all start molting. Very interesting. So why do we want to build a community? We want to build a community because we're helping people develop a sense of belonging. There is actually an epidemic of loneliness in the world today. Psychology Today actually did an article in November where they actually did a study, and the feeling of isolation and loneliness is at an all-time high, especially given that we were dealing with the pandemic. We're still, going back and forth, and people are starting to really, I say, have that kind of cabin fever, right? Where they don't want to be just by themselves. This is a great opportunity for your brand to create a community where people can come together and share something so that it helps them to bond. It helps them to feel less isolated. Just like those chin strap penguins, they come together to molt. That's it. They come together to support each other and they molt all in one spot. But the idea of digital doesn't need to leave that feeling of isolation. We've talked about having all these Zoom calls and Zoom burnout and working from home and all these things, but we can create a community that is digital and that allows some kind of space for our community to come into in order to have that sense of belonging and to be able to bond with one another. What it is not is a group where then you start pushing products and services. I don't know if you've noticed the theme. I'm really trying to get you to stop selling. Stop selling. Stop pushing wares. That transactional relationship, nobody wants that now. I said that 2 years ago when the pandemic came, that you're not going to be able to have this transactional relationship where I pay you money and you give me a goods and service and we say thank you and we're each on our way. People want to be brought into a digital space, a physical space, even a hybrid of those two, in order to find that sense of belonging that they've missed. Classic has done a great job with the women in exhibitions. That's a great community where women in exhibitions come together and we talk about different things that are roadblocks. We have a sense of camaraderie. We do virtual Zoom calls. We have a LinkedIn group. We do in-person things now at Exhibitor Live. But it's not an area where Classic or anybody else is just trying to sell products. It's really about bringing together a community. And when we create a community like that and we allow it to determine what the focus is, we allow the community to determine how often we should get together and what topics we should look at and how we develop that sense of belonging, that community then becomes a tribe. And that's where we want to start moving towards. That really does mean that what you're doing is you're creating space for the community. You're asking people within different groups, and what are you struggling with? What would help you to feel less isolated? What would help you to have a better sense of belonging? Create the space for it, and then get out of the way. And I know that that probably seems weird, but we want to allow our community to kind of take things and move forward. By allowing that community where it's a safe space and it's not a space where they're going to be sold to, it's a no-sell zone, you're not only creating that relatability because people have that sense of belonging, you're also getting goodwill because then people will continue to trust you. And again, I'm going back to, the stories that we talk about and that emotional connection. And like Mel was saying, that salesperson that says, well, the people buy from me. Why do they buy from that person? Because they trust that person. That's what we're trying to move towards. And we've been used to doing that, pre-pandemic and even pre-digital, because that's the only thing we could do. We had to develop communities and bring people together. And the trade show floor, the association that has a trade show, that's also a community. So how are we leveraging a community that's already established to allow other people to have an additional sense of belonging? Could we sponsor some kind of happy hour? Could we provide a space in our booth where we have education sessions? Could we work with the association to do something either pre-show or post-show, where again, we're developing that sense of community? How can we bring in a digital aspect? Can we have a live feed of the community? Can we have people there and have our speakers be remote? There's a lot of different things that we can do within the confines of both digital and physical to really help create that space and to establish that community and allow them to create something new. This is going to be really, really important for your organization moving forward. People really want to have that sense of belonging. And if they feel that you're standing for them so that they're not isolated and that you want them to have a better sense of belonging and that you want them to start to have those connections that maybe you have nothing to do with, again, that's going to be really powerful, and it's going to really help with that underlying sense of trust of your brand, your company, and what you stand for and what you do. People really are yearning to belong in this day and age. They really want that sense of belonging. So there were probably 1,000 chin strap penguins on that island where we landed. And then there was a group of Adelie penguins. And it was cute because they kind of like got together in 2s and 3s and 4s, and they would just stand by each other. So again, you can see they're just molting and just hanging out. So they established a community within a community. Kind of crazy. But again, there was a common purpose which allowed that sense of belonging. I'm going to stop again and see if there are any questions before we go on to our third topic, which is going to be pretty important. Melanie, questions?
I'm not seeing any questions in there. I did put a note out there, and it kind of reminded me of the Optima Now Taylor, but for years, for years and years, Optima's had that happy hour at Exhibitor Live.
Exactly.
And as I said in my chat, for many of us, that 1 hour, that 2 hour in that happy hour was actually more important as far as building a community than anything Optima did on the show floor.
Yes. Yes. And, I couldn't even tell you, if you asked me to pick out the Optima staff that were there, because I'm sure some of them were attending, they were there, but it wasn't like they were trying to infiltrate and sell. It was really, they were kind of on the perimeter, just kind of, engaging, but also kind of getting out of the way, which is something I always thought was really interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Mel, I've seen you do this at Exhibitor in your booth, where you'll have smaller gatherings. And again, it's just really honing that sense of community. And I think the trade show industry is just perfect for establishing community.
Yeah. So one of the things, many of the people that are in this particular session with you, Lisa, are members of what's called Classic Conversations. And Classic Conversations is what was monthly, which is now bi-monthly, just an hour chat on a small group of folks, anywhere from 15 to 25 people, just to talk about what's happening within their lives.
Yep.
It's been nice in that those distributors have said how much they've enjoyed it, but I would actually kind of flip that a little bit and say, for the team at Classic Exhibit, it's been a joy. It's been a joy to be able to have those conversations on a personal level with folks that sometimes we don't talk with enough on that level because we're so preoccupied with the order and getting the order through that those conversations have been really, really meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, if you're finding them meaningful, imagine what people who have been feeling isolated, that's like a lifeline.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Which is absolutely amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I would actually recommend, if you could, I mean, I don't know what your schedule is, but instead of going every other, when you say bi-monthly, you mean every other month?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I guess you went to bi-monthly because I'm sure now everyone's starting to get busy again and they're like,
Yeah,
I don't have time.
Yeah, that's exactly why. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it's great that you're still doing them because I have participated in several of those, and I remember when those came out. So, and I applaud you for continuing to do them because again, you're establishing the space for a community to really form into a tribe.
And I would say to some extent, it's a little selfish because we enjoy it so much. That's why we do it.
Which is great. Which is great. I love it. Absolutely love it. That makes me happy. Okay, so let's talk about humanizing your brand. So I had asked you to remember that photo with Create Your Story and the size of the juvenile to the parent. This was taken 4 days later. And as you can see, and there's actually two babies there. It's kind of hard to see them, but you see the one looking up. This is, again, an Adelie penguin. This baby is obviously very, very small compared to where it should have been for the season. This is unfortunately a sad story. This was probably a new couple, probably their first fledgling, maybe second, and they timed it incorrectly. This was taken, I think, right around March 1st. That parent would be molting and then would have to go to sea, to regain food and everything. And those babies, I would say 100% did not survive because they were born too late in the season to get to the point where they could actually follow the parent into the water to learn how to get fish and krill and all that good stuff. So, it's still a story, right? It's still a human story that even penguins make mistakes. That is the way nature kind of unfolds. Really, really cute. It was cute to see a baby, and then we were like, oh, it's unfortunate we're seeing a baby because we knew how the story unfortunately was going to end for those fledglings. So when we talk about our personal brand, we're talking about how that equates to a human interaction. People want to experience the people behind the brand. They're not looking to have some kind of watered down corporate messaging. And like Mel was saying, a salesperson can easily say, well, they buy from me. And that is true. Sorry. They are the astute sales guys know that it's about that relationship, that it's about trusting that person to purchase from them. And people really want to experience those people. Mel, I think about when you and I first met, which I think was like 10 years ago. And I had actually been reading your blogs before I even knew anything about classic exhibits. I knew Mel White. And when I knew Mel White, and then I was like, oh, you run a company called Classic Exhibits, that trust and that personal relationship easily transferred over. And I remember running into Jen Laberza at a show and saying, you know, and I was like, oh, you work for Classic? You know, I read Mel White's stuff all the time. And that's how she and I struck up a conversation, because of you, Mel. So again, it's establishing that personal brand, and then how that translates into your organization. I want to talk about Elon Musk and the effect on the brand Tesla. I want you to just put aside whether or not you think Elon Musk is a genius or you think he's the worst person in the world. Don't worry about that. You know who he is. He's spent quite a bit of time developing his personal brand as Elon Musk. Tesla, and I looked this up yesterday, Tesla was founded, and let me see if I can get this right. Tesla was founded in July 1st, 2003, and it was founded by 3 individuals. They realized that in order to make their electric car come true, they needed some money. They needed backing. So they reached out to then venture capitalist Elon Musk. Elon Musk came on as a primary stakeholder about, I think, 9 months later, sometime in 2004. And, you know, he worked with them and helped build up the brand. Interestingly, when you look at how much the US automotive market spends on advertising every year, which averages around 18 billion, Tesla has spent $0 on marketing. That seems odd. How can that be? Well, because Elon Musk was able to transfer his personal brand that people knew into the brand of Tesla. Have you ever seen an ad on Tesla? Have you ever seen a car commercial on Tesla? Have you ever seen an ad in a paper? Have you ever seen a Facebook ad? No, because Tesla doesn't need to spend money on marketing because they're leveraging the personal brand of Elon Musk. Interestingly, you know, you have all these companies that fight for this advertisement, yet I would say every single person in the US knows what a Tesla is. And people will, you know, I've heard people say, you know, yeah, I drive a truck, but, you know, honestly, if the prices of gas keep going up, I'm actually thinking about just saying, forget it, and I'm just going to go buy a Tesla. It's interesting. It's a very interesting dichotomy that you have all this money spent in the automotive industry, yet Tesla, because of the personal brand of Elon Musk, has been able to push Tesla to a level of trust and being known within the space where they don't need to spend one marketing dollar. It's a very interesting way of being, especially for an automotive company. When we talk about personal brands within an organization, and actually this was some of the conversations we were having last week at the Uprising conference, I heard a lot of people say, well, I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be famous. It's not about being famous. It's about being known. Being known for your experience, being known for your knowledge, being known for the skill sets you bring. That's what you need to focus on with personal branding. It is scary for brands. I know, because they have to actually let go of some control over the narrative. They have to let go of some control over these individual people within their organization that are developing their personal brand. However, by working on establishing that thought leadership position, that position of being known, that authority within your industry, like Mel White, you are actually helping to elevate the company brand. Because again, it's not about B2B. It's not about B2C. It's about P to P, person to person, people to people. That is what customers and prospects are looking for now. They're not looking for a brand to push their corporate message. They're looking for a brand to allow personal, known individuals who are thought leaders to emerge and allow these stars to shine in order to elevate everyone. And again, it can be a very, very frightening aspect for brands. And I get it. Now, I won't move yet. I want to actually talk about something because this also came up. How does SEO fit into personal brand? If you have been looking at your Google searches lately, you probably have been noticing that Google has changed their algorithm and the way they present findings and search results, where they actually have a snippets box where they're providing answers with no clicks. It's called a zero-click strategy. They are curating enough content now where they are feeling fairly confident that this is the answer. If they're providing that type of information with 0 clicks, you know, the question is, well, how often are they doing that? And studies have been showing that between 65 and 70% of your search results now are 0 clicks from Google, which means if I am bidding on search terms, if I am trying to optimize my content with what I believe are search results, 6 to 7 times out of 10, my SEO optimized content won't ever make it to the top because Google has already decided what content they're going to show. So you've already taken a small space where you're fighting for resources, and now Google comes in and puts up a big wall. So now your spot is even smaller. I'm not saying that, you know, SEO is awful. And of course, people who sell SEO will say, well, there's ways around it. However, I don't like playing fields that are stacked against me having a fair shot at winning. That's my opinion. So if Google is doing that, I would rather spend my time focusing on my personal brand attached to my company brand and elevating that to the top, because Google can't regulate that. They might be able to regulate booth design, but they won't be able to regulate classic exhibits. They might be able to regulate digital content expert, but they won't be able to regulate Lisa Apolinski. I would rather spend my time elevating my personal brand and my authority, because I am confident that that little space that's now just been chopped is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller.
So Lisa, a couple of people have kind of mentioned something about Tesla. And basically, I think the point that they're making is that, well, Tesla doesn't do traditional advertising like print magazines or TV ads. They spend a considerable amount of money on events or on promoting the opening of like the Gigafactory or on the introduction of a new product. But wouldn't you say what they're doing there is really an event or those kind of things is story building?
Yes, it's absolutely story building. Absolutely. Yes. And they didn't do events for 2 years. None of us did events for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they grew in sales.
Mm-hmm.
How's that possible? Because they already leveraged the personal brand of Elon.
Mm-hmm.
They could stop doing events tomorrow, as far as I'm concerned, and maybe put out a press release of a new model that's come out, and it would burn like wildfire. Or Elon Musk would just tweet about it, and then we'd all know. They've taken the traditional marketing of the automotive industry, they've taken that mold and they've smashed it to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But they've also created something completely new in a completely different area. And now they don't have to compete against any of these other vehicles because they're in their own little space. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's pretty powerful.
So Lisa, as we're starting to wrap up, I know one of the things that you'll probably be talking about, I'm guessing, at your session at Exhibitor Live, is the kind of the hero, the villain, the story, kind of creating that kind of mode. Can you give people kind of a sneak peek into that?
Sure. So, and again, I'm just going to point out it's more penguins.
Okay.
Because penguins are awesome. Yeah. So, in my presentation, one of the things we're definitely going to focus on are the 3 must-have roles in your story. They are the hero, because someone has to have a problem, right? If they didn't have a problem and there wasn't a protagonist, there'd be no story. There has to be a nemesis. There has to be something that's preventing the hero, the nemesis, the protagonist, from getting what he or she wants. And then there's the mentor character. Because again, if the hero could overcome the nemesis, then there'd be no story. It would just be someone overcoming the nemesis. Big deal. So those are the 3 must-have roles that we discuss during the session. And then we talk about how important each of the roles are and how important the role is that you choose for yourself in your story and what corresponding role your customer or prospect shows up for.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Any questions on the SEO thing? I'm surprised more people aren't like, crap, that they focus on Tesla, but that's great. I mean, those were great questions too.
It's funny you mentioned it, Lisa, because today alone, I searched for answers in Google twice today, and used those little boxes to get my answer, as opposed to clicking through.
Yeah, it's upsetting. Yeah, they've trained us. Yeah, and I get calls all the time saying, "Oh, you're not ranked high on Google." Yeah, I don't have the money to be able to rank at the top if someone put in digital marketing expert. I don't have that money, and I'd have to constantly pump it in. I'd have to continue to feed the beast in order to keep my ranking up there. I'd rather, if you Google Lisa Apolinski, I've got 10 pages of Google content, 10 pages of searches. So probably at least, what is that, like 70, 80, 90 things that come up immediately. So yeah, I'd rather spend my time doing that. Oops. So let me quickly just hit the key takeaways again. People love stories. Share your story because those stories do matter. Build your tribe so that people who have that yearn to belong can start to join your community. And really, it's good to be human. And people are seeking that human connection now. So look at how you are developing your personal brand, which again, should be part of your story and should be part of your community. I already talked about my book. I have the second one, Weathering the Digital Storm, if you're looking how to fortify your digital growth strategies. And again, Persuade with a Digital Content Story, which will be a 90-minute session at Exhibitor Live. And my new book is coming soon. Yay! It should be out on Amazon in the next few weeks. It is called Grow Your Market Share in a Zombie Apocalypse. Boom. Very exciting. And then there'll also be an Audible version with that. And if you have questions, if you want to start a conversation with me, interested in, learning more, I always welcome conversations. I love talking about this stuff. Obviously, I could talk for another hour if Mel would let me. But send me an email, call me, visit my website, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would be awesome too. And with that, I will hand this back over to Mel. And I think I've stopped sharing. Yay.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate your time. We appreciate all the knowledge that you share and the whole concept about storytelling. I learn something different every single time. So those of you who are attending Exhibitor Live, I encourage you to either attend Lisa's class or do what I do. I just pick her brain on the show floor and then, and buy her drink. And so, I get all that information for free.
Yay.
Yeah.
And I always say, I love you, Mel White.
Lisa. All right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it very much. And I hope we can pull together another webinar for everyone here in the next month or so. Bye-bye. Have a great week.
Bye, everyone.